Welcome to the Resilient Leader webinar mastermind series. This is session 1. The pressure is real. Leadership today is demanding in many ways that people never trained to navigate. Most leaders are carrying more complexity, emotional load, uncertainty, and responsibility than at any point in their careers. The session is not about becoming perfect, productive machines. It's about becoming more aware, more grounded, and more intentional under pressure. Today, we begin exploring how leadership stress affects the whole person and how awareness creates the possibility for resilience. So I want you to take just a moment and reflect silently. What currently feels most unsustainable in your life or leadership? Again, what currently feels most unsustainable in your life or leadership? Today, we want to distinguish between healthy challenge, temporary stress, chronic overload, and burnout, clarifying that pressure itself is not inherently bad. Pressure turns coal into a diamond. Strain and pressure on muscles is what helps them get stronger and grow. Challenge is the thing that often propels us and compels us forward. Meaningful work often includes responsibility, sacrifice, emotional labor, difficult decisions. The problems emerge when recovery disappears, when emotional load accumulates, when boundaries erode, and when people remain constantly activated. Consider this. Under sustained stress, leaders often attempt to solve overload by increasing effort. Imagine that you're at the gym and you're lifting weights, and the weight that you're lifting is right at your max capacity. How much sense does it make to then add additional 25-pound plates to each end of that bar? Not a lot. Resilience requires awareness, regulation, clear priorities, healthy systems, intentional recovery, and shared responsibility. I want to introduce to you a model that I've developed and that I use with my clients called the Synchronous Life System. The Synchronous Life System approaches people and organizations as living systems rather than machines. When one area of life experiences sustained pressure, the effects eventually spread throughout the rest of the system. I'll show you a visual of that in just a moment. Most leaders have learned to focus almost exclusively on occupational performance, but leadership resilience depends on the health of the whole person. Take a look at this image. The 6 domains: spiritual, physical, emotional, relational, intellectual, and occupational. I want to make a couple of quick notes here. One is that spiritual could include faith and religion, but it also includes our sense of purpose and the source of that purpose, our values and the source of those values, our sense of meaning of life, and the source of that sense of meaning and identity. Physical includes primarily energy, sleep, movement, health, and recovery, what we put into our bodies, how well we treat them, determines what we get from them to a large degree. Our emotional domain includes awareness, regulation, and resilience. Doesn't mean that we won't experience all of the primary emotions. In fact, healthy emotional life means that we do experience all of the primary emotions. It's a question of how we navigate those things when they come. The relational domain It includes trust, connection, communication, and a sense of belonging. The intellectual domain includes mental health and mental clarity. It also includes learning, creativity, attention. The occupational domain obviously includes our occupations, our jobs, our careers, our vocations, but also includes all the other things that occupy our time around which we prioritize. So that could be hobbies, it could be avocations, it could be taking care of a home or taking care of a family or taking care of yourself. All of those are occupations because there are things we prioritize over other opportunities. So, what does pressure often look like then in this context? Pressure in one area eventually affects the others. And that could mean that we recognize that we're not sleeping well. We normally get a pretty good night's sleep, and suddenly we're not sleeping well. That invites us to ask questions both about the physical domain. Well, maybe I've changed what I'm eating or drinking right before bed, or changed the way I'm moving my body right before bed. Maybe something's changed about the environment I'm in, the place, the room, the space, the air quality, things like that. It could also be that there's stress or strain in one of the other areas of our life, spiritual, emotional, relational, intellectual, or occupational. And that stress is disrupting our physical ability to sleep. And so that awareness invites us then to reflect holistically on all the rest of our life. We then also want to ask ourselves, whoops, sorry about that. We then also want to ask ourselves, where are the sources of strength and resilience, even when there is a place of pressure or strain or stress, where are the sources of strength or resilience? So, for instance, if I'm having trouble sleeping and I recognize that I've got a lot of mental stress and strain going on, maybe one of my relationships is challenged, maybe it's something at work, but my mind is racing a lot of the time. And so I have trouble falling asleep, I have trouble staying asleep. Well, what are the parts of my life where there is resilience, where there is strength, where there is extra capacity? And maybe I recognize that when I eat better and I eat healthier and when I exercise more in a reasonable way, that normally improves my quality of sleep. So that's one of the things I could do, because those are things that offload stress and help my body and my mind to deal with the stress and strain in a healthier, more productive way. So that would be one opportunity. Another opportunity, somebody might say, well, my spiritual life is really a source of strength and vitality and capacity for me. So maybe I want to lean into that. Maybe there are practices or rituals or readings or gatherings, ways of engaging my spiritual self. Maybe it's getting outdoors in nature. Maybe it's reading poetry. Whatever it is that really helps us lean into that place of deep meaning, purpose, and value. For a lot of folks, it's volunteering. What a lot of therapists will tell us is that when we get so wrapped up in our own problems, one of the things that's really helpful is if we can find a way to serve somebody else, maybe, go volunteer someplace in a way that gets us out of focusing on our own issues and our own problems for a little while. And that can be really powerful. So what does that pressure look like? It could be cognitive decision fatigue. It could be tunnel vision. It could be mental overload. Emotionally, it could be irritability or anxiety or emotional exhaustion, discouragement. Relationally, it could be withdrawal, conflict escalation, reduced empathy, or communication breakdown. Organizationally, it could be unclear priorities or disengagement or constant firefighting or cultural erosion. So those are things to look for when we think about pressure. We're going to do an exercise now that's going to help us really dial in on this. All right. So we encourage people to do what's called an examen. It's a fancy word for it. It comes out of numerous religious and spiritual traditions. And essentially what it is a pause to stop and reflect and literally examine uh, our life, to pause and think, what's going on with my life? How am I doing? And there are multiple ways of doing that. The way we were going to focus on using the synchronous life model is we give folks a journal. Whoop, that one's black. You can't see the black uh, on that black background. Here's one in brown. Does that show up a little bit better? So the idea on the front, you've got an overview. On the back, you've got the list of the 6 domains. And then on the inside front cover, it talks about what I'm going to describe now, which is to pause. We suggest 3 times a day, morning, midday, and evening, and take 30 seconds for the whole thing. Give yourself 5 seconds on each of the 6 domains. We're going to do that now. And just ask ourselves, how am I doing spiritually? And give yourself a score of 1 to 5. 1 being, not great. And 5 being, man, I feel amazing spiritually. I really feel good about my spiritual life. And then if there are a couple of words or a phrase or an image, you might jot that down as well. And then move on to physical. How am I doing physically right now in this moment? Give yourself a score of 1 to 5. Make a couple of notes. How am I doing emotionally? What's my emotional state right now? Give yourself that 1 to 5 score. You might write down one of the core emotions: mad, glad, sad, scared. Uh, you might have some other words that you want to use. How am I doing relationally? What's going on in my relationships? Do I have some relationships that are really solid? Is one of my core relationships really challenged or struggling right now? Am I lacking, or am I really thriving in my relationships right now? And just pause and reflect on that. Give yourself a quick score of 1 to 5. If you said you got a 5 or a 1, maybe make a note of who or what it is that's leading you to write that number. Intellectually, am I intellectually challenged? Am I intellectually inspired? Am I feeling creative? Am I engaged intellectually in the way that I want to be? Not in the way that works for somebody else necessarily, but in the way that works for me. And again, write down a number, 1 to 5. Maybe make a note about what idea it is that's inspiring you to be creative or really challenging you to dig deeper and to think about something. Or maybe intellectually you're struggling and thinking about, well, what is it that you're struggling with intellectually right now? Is there some cognitive dissonance going on? And make a note of that. And then finally, occupationally, which again includes the work that we do for pay, if there is any, but is also all of the other things that go into a well-rounded life. And here we might reflect and say, okay, I'm a 2 because you know what, there's this hobby that I really want to get back to. It's been important in my life in the past. And I really want to get back to it, or I can't do that hobby anymore for whatever reason. So I want to find a new hobby. And so maybe for a while we're going to write 2 there because we're looking and searching. And then when we find that thing and we dig into it, maybe that goes to a 3 or a 4 or even a 5. And as we do this exercise, again, it really takes only 30 seconds. Over time, throughout a day, throughout a week, throughout a month, throughout a season, and even the longer seasons of our life, the ebbs and flows of life, the ups and downs, we notice patterns and trends, and that can be really powerful and really helpful. Just that awareness and that additional knowledge of what's going on in me and through me and around me, it gets us a long way towards greater resilience. Because one of the things that really undermines resilience is lack of awareness, lack of understanding of why we're thriving or struggling in the moment. Consider what creates the greatest pressure in your life or leadership. Maybe it's workload, financial pressure, caregiving uncertainty, emotional exhaustion, staffing challenges, constant accessibility, conflict, lack of recovery. Could be a lot of different things. Then ask yourself, what's really needed? What pressure are you carrying that others might not see? What currently feels most unsustainable? And what helps you remain grounded under that pressure? Jot some notes down, give yourself an opportunity to reflect on that. As we go through our leadership in particular, really paying attention to what is actually needed right now. We often react automatically from anxiety or urgency, emotional activation or exhaustion or habit. And practicing and paying attention to our leadership creates space for discernment, for regulation, for intentionality, and for wiser responses. If you've not already done so, I really encourage you to visit synchronouslife.com and take the assessment. It'll take you somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes, depending. Don't rush through it, but also don't spend too much time kind of obsessing over any question. Just give your first initial response. And again, it's going to invite you to score in response to these questions or prompts that you're going to get. At the end of that, you'll get two versions of a report. One will be a visual report that you could download or like print and save the page because it stays on the website. And then the other is a PDF, and they're different. So you want to capture both of those. And we'll continue to use that work, and you'll see other opportunities to engage and connect and learn there on the website. Leadership resilience is not about eliminating pressure. It's about building awareness, creating healthier systems and rhythms, learning how to remain grounded under pressure. So not eliminating pressure, but staying grounded under pressure. And awareness is often the first step toward meaningful change. Remember, practice your 3 times a day daily reflection exercise, complete the Synchronous Life System assessment, pay attention to pressure patterns. Notice how stress affects communication and relationships. The next session will be Wednesday the 13th at 10:30 Central Time, Central Daylight Time. I'm in Texas, so that's 10:30 my time, 11:30 on the East Coast. In the US, Mountain Time would be 9:30, 8:30 on the Pacific, out in California, Washington, and Oregon. I hope this has been helpful. Would love to hear from you. Please don't hesitate to reach out, call me, email me, and let's continue to do this work together to move towards wholeness and flourishing, to have a greater sense of well-being for ourselves and those in our community, those we lead, those in our family, those among our friends. And as we do that, my hope for you is that you find more times in your day when you feel as though you are really thriving. That's my goal for you and for me as well. And until next time, thanks so much. Take care.